This is going to be a quick overview of some of the terms for this unit, Unit 8 on genetics. We've talked about the fact that Mendel used peas and that he used purebred and hybrid. And if you need that information, that's in the PowerPoint that's on Moodle. But what I need you to really think about is the fact that his parents that he started with were purebreds. And that's where he developed the term. And that's how he knew exactly what traits they carried. Again, remember that Mendel could self-pollinate and cross-pollinate the flowers. He had the ability to manipulate. And that has to do with the fact that flowers have male and female parts. And in pea plants, it's really easy to control that. So this part right here, is the top of the female part. And this part right here is the male. So the pollen grains come off this and land on that. So if Mendel puts a bag over this plant, then the only pollen that can land on that female is the pollen from itself. So therefore it's self-pollinated. We know, you should know by now, that traits, or the genes for traits, are found on your chromosomes. So let's say that these are single-armed chromosomes from mom and from dad. Your alleles would be found on these chromosomes. So remember we said homologous chromosomes, same gene, different form of a gene. Well, big T, little t, two different forms of a gene. Okay, so there's one possible combination. You could also have big T, big T. They happen to be two of the same forms. They don't have to be the same. It's still a homologous chromosome. Or little t, little t. All right, so these are gene pairs or alleles. Okay, gene pairs and allele pairs. And we have names for these. Alleles are always used letters. We usually use the letter that starts the dominant trait, so T is for tall, when they are two different alleles. In other words, one big and one little. We call this heterozygous. When they're two of the same, big T, or little t, we call this homozygous. The difference here is this is homozygous dominant because it's two big letters, and this is homozygous recessive. So those are the vocab terms for that. Now, what Mendel actually did was he took his P generation, which is this guy, crossed them, and produced his F1 generation. Then he crossed these guys. Now, obviously, you can't cross three flowers, but he self-pollinated one of these and produced the F2. All right, F means filial, which is like family or related. So he started with, we'll do the color. He started with big P, which is your purple flower, and he crossed it with little p, which is your white flower. And when he did this, every single flower turned out to be purple. Why? That's what his question was. Well, what he figured out was that the genes in the parents, which in this case are big P and big P, segregate or separate into the offspring. So this parent gave each child a big P. This parent, the white parent, gave each child a little p. He has to. That's all he has to give. So therefore, Mendel came up with his law of segregation. Okay, so he figured out that these guys were heterozygous, his F1 generation, and therefore they looked purple. But then when he crossed the big P with the big P, or self-pollinated that, then he got something different, and you saw those results in the lab today. he got 3 purple and 1 white. And it was very close to a 3-to-1 ratio. And Mendel said, I wonder why. Well, if you think about the boxes, right? One parent is big P, little p. The other parent is big P, little p. Now, just an FYI, by convention, if it's hard to understand the difference between big and little, underline your little. When the alleles from the parents separate, law of segregation. So that one goes into that box. Remember, these boxes are your potential offspring. And these move down to there. This parent moves over. Big P, little p, little p. Now, just so we're consistent, you always write the big P first. When Mendel did this, segregated his alleles into his boxes, he realized that he got purple, 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 and pink. So that one of these purple was big P, and you don't know which one, but it doesn't matter. 2 of the purples are big P, and the white has to be little p, and that's how he gets his ratio. Just to add a few more vocab words in there, you've got words like genotype, which is the actual genes that are present, dictated by or shown by alleles. So big H is a genotype. Big T, little t is a genotype. Whereas phenotype is the actual physical expression. So the physical expression of big T, little t is tall. So if you go back and look at the previous slide, for this particular flower, the phenotype is purple. The genotype is big P, big P. So that's how you use those terms.